Everybody, Cabinet, and first item on the agenda is minutes, to confirm the minutes and decisions from the previous meeting, which was the one at 10 a.m. in the morning. Are those minutes agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Do we have any apologies for absence? I don't think we do. Claire, perhaps?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any declarations of interest in relation to Bugler or, any particular risks? No? Okay. And the next item, if I can work my cursor, is public participation. There is none. Are there any referrals to Cabinet that I previously not notified? No referrals to Cabinet. So the Cabinet forward plan on page 9, is that noted? Yes. Oh, Nigel.
A glaring omission, which I think I updated the group at the last Cabinet session, the budget at February Cabinet seems to be missing. Can we please make sure that that's included?
I don't think we need a budget this year, do we? Sure, if we skip 1 year.
Yeah, it'd be quite hard to do the budget council.
Okay, all right, we'll put it back in. Good, thank you for that. And now moving on to our first proper item, which is the Strategic Risk Register Q4 for 2023-24, and invite Councillor Allen to introduce this report.
Well, I think I'll defer to the expert.
Okay, so apologies in terms of the timeliness. This is around scheduling and the changing Cabinet dates that have happened. This should have come earlier in the year, and actually the Q2 Strategic Risk Register is about to go to the Audit Committee, which tells you how old this is. In terms of strategic risk at year end, there was no significant changes from the Q3 to the Q4 report, and no red rated risks at the end of 23-24. I can inform the Cabinet that at the moment there are still no red risks in terms of strategic risks, but they will be reported to Audit Committee prior to Cabinet early in the new year.
Very good. Are there any other comments on this particular report? No. In that case, I will ask if we will approve the Q4 2024 update on the Strategic Risk Register. Agreed? Agreed. Thank you. And moving on to the next item, which is also Councillor Allen, the Treasury Management Outturn and Performance Indicators for 2023-24. And again, I'll defer to the expert.
Let me pick this one up as well, because it refers to 23-24. This is the statutory return in terms of the annual performance through 23-24 against our prudential indicators. We were in line or ahead of all our prudential indicators. One thing that I know this group and obviously Audit Committee and Scrutiny are very aware of, the significant improvement on our returns on our Treasury last year. So I'll note paragraph 2.12, which shows that we got an average rate of return on our cash balances of 4.88% last year. That was in stark contrast to the previous year, where we only got 2.03%. As we're aware in this group, to the quarterly revenue monitoring returns, that has brought a great financial return for 23-24, and early on in 24-25 is also bringing a return. Now, at the moment, interest rates are projected to go down, although there are some discussions around the forecasting for those interest rate reductions to maybe slow down following current economic performance projections and the recent budget. So I will keep this group, as well as Audit Committee and Scrutiny, aware of what we think in terms of projections for future Treasury investments. The mid-year 24-25 Treasury Investment Performance Report is due to go to Audit Committee very shortly and will come through to Cabinet in January.
Thank you. Any other comments on this report, or questions, or anything? In that case, are we agreed that the Cabinet recommends to Council acceptance of the report on Treasury Management Performance and the prudential indicators for 2023-24.
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you. And moving on to item 9. And this is the appointment of a principal contractor for the Paradise Depot, Hemel, Hempstead, which I can't remember what that's supposed to be called when it's, what's the working title? Or is that the working title?
Paradise Depot.
Okay,
Yeah.
fine. I suppose Paradise could have a worse name. Does anybody know where Paradise came from originally?
Paradise Fields, I think. It's known as Paradise Fields.
Literally called Paradise Fields.
Yeah,
Okay.
from years back.
Bold claim, isn't it? Must have been a really nice field.
Before the new town.
Okay. Right, so this is a report. So I'll go to Councillor Diani.
Thank you. So this is to appoint Bugler for building completing this site, which started and only lasted 6 months with ARJ. It's 58 units and commercial building for dense. And I'm hoping we should go ahead with this because we have funding from Homes of England for this, and if we don't go ahead, there are more implications, but one of them is that we need to return what we've already invested, which is in excess of 5 million. So yeah, we should go ahead.
5.4 million we've received already.
Over to Julie, because
Okay, I'll just roughly recap is that as Councillor Dianis just said that ARJ construction started November 23 and then unfortunately at the end of April went into administration, which was a significant shock to us because we'd had strong financial information. We have, following commercial board approval, negotiated with the next best tender, which was with Bugler Construction, and the due diligence and cost evaluation that we've had from our professional advisors, that we've obviously reached the cost. Obviously, members, it won't be lost on members that the cost has increased by around 6.5 million, but that's reflective of the inflationary pressures from the original tender to the construction and labour prices that we're seeing in the industry now. So there is that increase in around 6.5 million. 4.7, just over 4.7 of that is for the HRA, and remainder, some of that will also then be the general fund for the commercial building at Dens. At the moment, Homes England are very supportive, and because they want to deliver the units, and this is exceptional circumstances. So I think that they've known the trajectory that we are following to try and get approval from members, and subject to it being approved today, obviously we will let them know straight away that it will be approved and we'll get into contract as soon as we possibly can.
Thank you. And I know from some of the discussion that we had that when this item came forward, you had quite a few questions for officers about, you know, what was.
yeah, why Bugler? Because I felt that they do a few projects for us already, and I felt, how would they have this manpower, and would they be actually be able to carry this out? And yeah.
Paradise Fields is literally just up the hill, as members will probably be aware, on St Albans and on St Albans Road. And the plan for Bugler is that they will literally lift and shift their workforce and site manager from Paradise Fields down the hill to Paradise Depot. Paradise Fields is due to complete mid-January, and the programme currently is that they would be mobilised and would actually start in March. So it actually fits quite nicely for them.
And I must say, I feel Bugler do very good quality work, so they have a very high standard. So it's not just the question, but yeah, there's definitely room to even go once again if there is more work for them, for sure.
No. So some things that we were discussing earlier. So, but firstly, it seemed to me, looking through there, that if we were to, the alternative is to mothball the site and then forego the grant from Homes England with no real plan after that, which would be quite awful, despite the fact that we're having to spend quite a lot due to the inflation to make it actually happen. But the one thing that comes out of this is that the ARJ quote, the original quote, seemed to be so much less. It was like £4 million less, and it raises the question of whether we are doing the really good due diligence to make sure the contractor really understands what the implications are and how they managed to fall over so badly, and why they were so much cheaper than the Bugler quote at the time.
So let me just come in there very briefly. In terms of the time of the quote for ARJ, it was just prior to the construction inflation boom that happened. And to be very clear, this contract for ARJ was not a lost loser. This is not the reason for them going into administration. They are a very large entity dealing with a lot of local authorities, a lot of registered providers across the country. So from this perspective, this was not a project that was a loss leader that sent them into administration. We unfortunately are being impacted by their wider business model, and we're still not fully understanding it as to the rationale behind their need to go into administration. And I wouldn't want to, in this forum, in public, to make comments around that, but there are various other sector reasons why they're going to administration, not because of the costing around this project alone. In terms of the size of their company, they were so much huger than this relatively small scheme.
Yes, I think the only thing I would add is that the more sector-wide issues was around the additional requirements of the Building Safety Act, and that they had other schemes that were not progressing because it's building safety regulator capacity to deal with those high-risk buildings, and they decided to make a decision, and unfortunately we were victim to that. So, but all the due diligence was, we were absolutely satisfied that they met the requirements and had at that point the financial probity to carry out this task.
And as you said, it was fortunate that there was a contractor that we have a good relationship with, literally just around the corner. And with the delay that was inherent, although that meant that we had the inflation cost pressures, it also meant that the timeline worked for some, what I gather are some basically quite a local workforce. So we're talking about people who work here and live probably in the borough. Quite a few.
Some will be within Hertfordshire, but yes.
In Hertfordshire,
yeah.
Okay. Yes, please.
Thank you. Just a couple of observations and questions, I suppose. I'm fully supportive of it. I mean, obviously, we want to repeat it, but it does raise a question, because this is the second time Bugler have stepped in to rescue a scheme where the contractor's gone under. And Bugler have finished schemes for us, and they've always been really good. You go, the ones who've visited, the quality of the finish, the quality of the workmanship was all good, usually on time and usually on budget. So, have no problem with that. But if Bugler decided not to bid for some of our work, it seems there's hardly anybody else out there picking up. We'd have hardly any choice, or in some cases, probably not get any realistic bids if it wasn't for this one company, which is a little bit worrying. Say if they suddenly decided they didn't want to do these jobs anymore, I think we'd be struggling to find anybody to do the work, and that's worrying. But I do have a question on page, it's item 4.1, page 46. I've never seen in any report on housing the income expressed in this way before, i.e. that the building will generate X and it will pay back the cost of the borrowing in a number of years. Is that figure of 390,000 the gross rental income, and assumes that you can pay it back in 41 years, but there'll never be a penny of other costs associated with that building in 41 years?
So that is a very simplistic understanding in terms of payback. So yes, it is. It's the gross income against the gross cost. The net present value of this project brings a positive net present value within the life of the asset within 60 years. But we felt for this public report, it was easy to keep it a little bit more simplistic rather than go through the net present value and annual increase in terms of rental versus the fixed cost of borrowing.
So to be fair, it's simplistic but not accurate.
It is accurate for what it says. It is entirely accurate because it says 41 years on the direct borrowing to the HRA. Now, if we wanted to represent the net present value, it's still a positive net present value within the lifetime of the asset. So again, it's still financially viable from a HRA perspective. The reason why we've slightly changed in terms of how we're reporting this is because previous HRA new build projects have not been financially sustainable. And going forward, given our increased borrowing with the current new build programme, we're unable to support new build projects going forward that are not financially sustainable. Because the HRA doesn't have the financing to be able to support unsustainable projects, which is why we slightly changed the approach in terms of how we take it forward.
Okay, I understand. I mean, sorry.
No, carry on.
Yes, I mean, I've always understood that, you know, socially, houses built for social rent, you know, the rent would never cover the cost if you're borrowing the money to build them, and we're reliant upon the income stream from 10,000 other properties to effectively cross-subsidise new build, because it's the only way you've been able to do it. And at some point you would get to a balance which we're probably getting to, where that doesn't cross out. I just think that I hadn't seen it expressed like this before, and if you were a non-finance person reading the report, you would simply assume that 390,000 will repay the cost in 41 years, which in reality it can't.
The 390,000 grows year on year by about 3%. The cost of borrowing is fixed. So in the first few years, if we're going to go into very technical, the first few years, yes, it is loss making. In the latter years, it's massively profitable. And that's why we went on a very simplistic model, because we did look at net present value on all these and thought we'll go down net present value, but then the average person in the street reading a cabinet report might go NPV, and we'd have to put a whole section in around what net present value was and talk about the discounting of finance, etc.
Yeah, so it does get more. I appreciate it, much more complicated. I just think it oversimplifies it in the way we hadn't expressed it like this before, and I think it oversimplifies it.
No, it's a fair point. It's a fair point.
Thank you.
I don't disagree. I think unfortunately it's an unfortunate fact of local government and the finance that some concepts are complicated, but in order to be perfectly accurate, you probably have to embrace a little bit of complexity. And I read this, and I think lots of people would have read this and gone, okay, 390,000 times 41 years, and as simple as that. And of course, it's not quite as simple as that.
It feels like saying, I've got an income of £1,000 a month, I'll take on £1,000 a month mortgage, pay it back over 20 years, and assume that I won't have to spend a penny on the house in any other way during those years. I can put every penny into the mortgage. That's how that reads, and that's obviously not realistic in the real world. But I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Can I just check? Is 4.1, is that a normal part of a report like this, or is it a normal part of a report which has been modified for this report?
So in terms of the finance sections, there is significantly more analysis done into it. We have, not just 4.1, but the whole of section 4, you'll notice the finance section is significantly larger than usual. Yeah. And equally, we did a couple of things that we wouldn't or haven't done previously, such as take additional financial assistance in terms of analysis of Buchler as well, given what's happened in recent times. So what we aimed to achieve in that kind of section 4 was, one, to give a clearer rationale as to how we assess people, what additional assessments we've done, because again, there's been feedback from both scrutiny and from Cabinet in terms of how we're assessing those entities. And then equally, we tried to represent a fairly simplistic but understandable model for the average resident as to what this was doing. And so yes, there is more information in there, but the idea was to give people more comfort rather than have less information in there. Maybe the statement of, this is a financially viable product would have been a better line to put in the report rather than the detail that we did.
So in a way, 4.1 is a way of saying, look, here's an envelope. Yeah. Here's a magnitude for you to think about. And then the following points talk about what's in that.
And the report has been to scrutiny in the same format. And there wasn't any pushback from that perspective, but it's something we can work on.
I enjoyed that part because I did the working in NPVs and I felt actually good to know.
Yeah.
A real perspective how the money works in a cycle.
It is, and we can work on the balance between, you know, what kind of detail we put in here with these kind of assessments to make it viable for the end user. You know, with all due respect, the people around this room, I can quite happily sit down and show lots of other models to, whereas average Joe on the street wants to know, you know, is this viable or not? And maybe we can work on the wording and make that a little bit clearer and a bit more transparent going forward. But yeah, it's there to make improvements.
I think as well, when we do our financial appraisals, we do add in management and maintenance allowances, and we obviously stress test it of what the rent settlement forecast for percentage increases and the cost of finance, all those sorts of figures go into that financial appraisal, so that we can see what year it would pay back. So we do factor that in.
Very good. Always good to have a little bit of scrutiny at Cabinet, I think. Yeah, just a little bit. Okay, so the recommendation here is that Cabinet approves entering into the JCT design and build contract with Bugler Developments Limited for delivery of 56 units and a standalone commercial building at the hub. That's what I was looking for, the hub at Paradise Depot, Hemel Hempstead. And number 2, delegates authority to the Assistant Director, Legal and Democratic Services to execute and complete all legal agreements ancillary to the design and build contract and or reasonably required to complete the project, including professional appointments, collateral warranties and agreements under section 38.278, section 247, section 104 and section 50 of the relevant acts. Do we agree? Agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I think that is nearly the end.